Nick.
And I'm Melanie.
I'm a biochemistry major at the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
And I'm a food science chemistry major, also at Madison. And we're scholars, Bose scholars from 2013. And
What's the first question?
we're going to tell you a little bit about our trip to India so that you can be better prepared to also decide if you want to apply to go as well. So what process led you to choose the institute that you chose?
Well, for me personally, I went through the list that the program gave you of all of the universities, and I looked at all the professors to see if there was research going on that piqued my interest. I looked at the location to see where I'd be staying. I was looking more for like a safer city, one close to an urban center like Mumbai. And then I actually talked with Dr. Ansari, who helps run the program, and got his input as to where he thought I would be best to go.
And I talked to a few family friends that were from India and about different locations, about which were, urban centers we want to be closer to, and they narrowed it down to sort of 4 big cities of Pune, Delhi, Hyderabad, and Bangalore as being like the 4 big cities. So then we found institutes that were at those and sort of whatever interests we had at them. And then as far as preparing for this giant trip, aside from deciding the institution we wanted to go to, that was quite the challenge.
We both got tourist visas. We both obtained healthcare through our university. As far as immunizations went, I went to a travel clinic in my hometown. Melanie did something different.
Yeah, I went to UHS just on campus, so just like the health clinic. And they had like all the information about where you're going and what you would need from there.
And as far as medicines that I packed, they gave me anti-diarrhea medication and they gave me malaria drugs, even though I wasn't in a place that was considered a malaria zone. In case I did travel to some place like Mumbai or New Delhi, I did need that medication, so I didn't contract malaria.
Right. And I was the same. Most of the basic drugs, the anti-diarrhea and the malaria, as well as I brought my normal allergy meds and some cold and flu stuff just in case. We were also suggesting though that vitamins would be a good idea.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend packing multivitamins, as well as maybe iron supplements.
Vitamin C.
Things like that, because there isn't a lot of red meat in India, so you're going to definitely be consuming a lot less iron than you would in the United States.
Your diet sort of goes on a flip change, so you go from college food here to it's a lot of carbs and starches, potatoes, rice, naan, bread.
And when did we receive our stipend checks? I received mine in 2 payments. I halfway through got 25,000 rupees, and then at the very end of my internship got the other 25,000. I came to India with, I believe, 5,000 rupees, just so I had spending cash that I could live off of while I was waiting to get my stipend, and that worked out really nicely. It went really far. It had no problems with having shortage of cash.
Yeah, it's about, I don't know the equivalent, but I got some upon landing, switched it out at the airport there, which is not a good idea. Those exchange rates are not very good. So I think if you have just a little bit to go off when you go over there, exchange 100 USD here, that's plenty to get you on your feet before you should get your stipend, in 2 sort of payments, installments, I think halfway through and then one at the end.
Yeah, I didn't exchange mine at the airport. I exchanged mine at our bank, and that worked out pretty nicely.
So as far as when we were heading over to India, meeting people in advance was a little bit tricky. I was, however, able to get in contact with my professor I was going to be working with, and the other girl that I was going to be staying at the Institute with from University of New York. So then we were able to coordinate sort of flying out there together and stuff, which was helpful.
I didn't exactly have any contacts, I would say, in India beforehand. I was able, through the program, to arrange a ride with the institution to come meet me at the airport. But other than that, I didn't have any contacts.
Which should not be the case for most people. Now it should be that you should have contact before going there. You should know the people that you're going to be going with. And as far as booking tickets, that'll be done by the institution and they'll be paying for it, which is not sort of what we had.
Yeah, I booked mine through cheaptickets.com. Cost about $2,300, but that's because I bought it, it might have even been like the week of, like 3 days before I was actually leaving. Yeah, so it was very last minute, so the price was really high. That won't be the case this year. And our program paid for about $1,200 of the ticket. That won't be the case this year. It sounds like they're making it. Yeah, they're taking care of the full cost. And then we also had a travel scholarship from the University of Wisconsin that was able to help us out with that too.
So yeah, it ended up covering all of our flights, but it'll be a lot easier for scholars looking to go now because they'll be in charge of booking your tickets from the conference in Chicago, and you'll be able to meet up with other scholars that you'll be traveling with, which is also useful. So upon landing, my flight got in super early in the morning, and there was a driver from the institute there to pick the other scholar that I went with and I up and brought us straight to the institute, which was helpful.
And I landed, I would say, probably like 11 a.m. and I had someone there waiting with a sign to come pick me up. They were able to bring me to the institution, so I didn't need to take a cab.
So yeah, all scholars should have a contact at the university that will be in charge of finding a ride to and from the airport, so that you don't have to be landing and freaking out about, you know, how to get to and from the institute. That'll all be covered and taken care of. So hopefully you'll have a contact or someone waiting there with like a sign that says your name on it. That'll be useful. So living there then at the institution, I was fortunate enough to live on campus to where I was working, which was very nice, meaning I was able to like walk to and from work every day. And it was a fairly nice facility. There was like 2 rooms, it had fans, there was a TV that they ended up hooking up with cable, there was a telephone, washing machine, and a small like kitchenette. There aren't really ovens there, but we had a little stove and fridge, so that was more than enough.
Yeah, so once I got to the institute, I had someone show me to my hostel, showed me where I would be staying. My hostel didn't have all the accommodations that Melanie's had. It had a bed and a bathroom and a desk, but I didn't have any internet or TV or refrigerator or
So
kitchen.
that'll all be sort of living situation specific.
Yeah, so I mainly lived off non-perishable food items, things that didn't need to be refrigerated, you know, sandwiches, a lot of sandwiches, peanut butter, those types of things.
So we did both have roommates, and that'll continue through with scholars. No one should be at an institute by themselves or living by themselves. So my roommate was from University of New York, and that was great. And
mine was also from NYU, and he was actually, he had family and friends in the area, so he was able to make connections that way.
And sort of, there were people there to help sort of tour around the campus, and that was great. So there will be someone to give you guidance as far as like upon arriving and where you're going to be going and where your lab is and who your mentor is, so that you sort of get your feet underneath you.
And Yeah, on my first day, I had an orientation with the director of the institute. Me and my roommate did, he gave a brief description of the history of the institute, the research that's going on, and then we met directly with our mentors immediately following that. So they were able to show us where we would be working and who we'd be working with and the facility that we'd be working in.
And the facilities are mainly like they are in the US, though it's major differences. Because even within the US at different institutes and in different departments, all labs are different and how they operate and sort of protocol, so it's hard to say if that'll be universal for everyone.
I agree.
Some major differences? Footwear.
Yeah, I worked in a very like biosafety hazard type of lab, so we were handling HIV positive blood, so we needed to wear full lab coats, 2 pairs of gloves, covers for our shoes, and so yeah, I don't think Melanie had that.
No, I was in a protein structure and sort of computational lab, which was way more lax on that. The one thing that I found interesting was that my roommate was in like a stem cell lab, and the lab shoes, the certified like lab shoes for being in a sterile environment, were flip-flops. And that sort of was different, but they were flip-flops that were only to be worn in the lab. So you may just have some shoe issues. I mean, I would still bring covered-toed shoes as you would in a lab here, but they may have different rules as far as what you're supposed to wear when you're actually in lab. And that'll be sort of specific as to what research you're doing.
Did the electricity go out? All the time.
Really?
Yeah, we had a lot of power surges, at least one every 3 hours.
Really?
Yeah, but it wasn't like the lights would go out, but they had like backup generators to all the computers, so you'd never like lose any information. So you never had to worry about that. But yeah, the lights would go out, then you'd hear some beeping, and then they'd come back on. Nothing like you got used to. It was not a big deal at all.
Yeah, not like the U.S. where it goes out, you know, with a giant snowstorm for like 3 days. Like, it almost happens more frequently, so they're better prepared to deal with it. I think, in general. Also, I got lucky, my lab had AC, not all of them had air conditioning.
Yeah, mine did too.
So,
yeah, that was nice.
Probably want that. So the project, I think it was interesting because you get to pick what research you want to do, and that's how Bose and Chrono program is different than a lot of study abroad or research programs where you don't have as much flexibility, and it's sort of up to you and finding a program that you're interested in and finding research and a PI that you want to deal with or work with. So it's a lot more exciting then.
Yeah, so like I said, I was handling HIV positive blood, like from patients at the institute. So that was something I had never dreamed I would ever come in contact with or ever be able to actually gain experience doing. So that was really interesting and really cool. As far as work challenging, I feel like maybe I could have been pushed a little bit more, but it was still to the point where I was getting, you know, results and making strides and having a good experience research-wise.
I think a lot of what I learned while being abroad there, that it's sort of what you make of it. Like, they're not going to give you a project if you don't go and ask for it. So you need to like come over. I spent the whole first 1 or 2 weeks just reading papers. And if I had asked for those in advance, I could have read them while I was here and then had a better, you know, quicker jump on it. Because even though you're there for like 10 weeks or so, it's not a whole lot of time. But if you're spending time reading papers and doing lab safety stuff, that it's cutting in on your research time. So I would definitely say, you know, if you feel you're ready to take on the responsibility, make that aware, you know, make that known. And they'll give you more. You get more.
Definitely agree. How were my lab mates? All my lab mates were very nice. They were very helpful. I actually worked mainly alongside one of them throughout most of my time there. and she was wonderful, super helpful, very patient. If I ever had any questions, she was always there to answer them. She always was able to help me with the next steps of the project. So yeah, my lab mates were really nice.
And did you work with your PI a lot, or did you like?
No, I didn't. I didn't work with my PI. I would work with this graduate student, and then I would get my results and then bring it to my PI, which may be different from what you do here in the United States, is where you really don't make that. You know, yeah, you don't bring every result that you get to your PI. There I did. So after every day I would meet with her for like 5 minutes and be like, here's what happened, and then she'd be like, okay, here's the next steps for the next day. And I'd work with that graduate student the next day, and then we just go from there.
Yeah, I think sort of like labs here, it's all situation dependent on who you're going to be working with. I think most of the time you're not working directly with the PI. Like my PI was the head of the institute, so I rarely saw him. I worked mainly with the postdoc that I was working under at the time. But yes, he was very helpful, like giving guidance and sort of like working with, so you know, the project always starts as something and it's modified as you go along with what works and what doesn't work, so definitely very thorough and helpful, involved on that. I wasn't ever really left questioning what to do, and that should be how it is for future scholars.
What did we do for food?
Yeah.
So for breakfast I would have cereal. I had a little like Tupperware container that I would just pack cereal in every day and bring that. I didn't have any milk, but that's okay. For lunch I ate at the canteen. Had roti, rice, whatever they had for that day. It was really cheap. It was only
50 cents?
It's the equivalent of 50 cents. I don't know how much that is. 25 rupees? That sounds about right. So it was really, really cheap. And you were able to like go up as many times as you wanted.
And dinner?
And dinner, I had I had my sandwiches and like chips and Oreos. But then we tried every Thursday to like meet up and like go to a restaurant in the city. Sometimes it was Papa John's. Sometimes it was like a real fancy Chinese restaurant. Sometimes it was KFC. KFC is surprisingly big over there.
Chicken is good.
Yeah, so we tried to explore and get out at least once a week.
Yeah, there is like a food kind of dining service. And I remember you could like sign up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They served all 3 meals there. And you could either buy that daily or buy like a month of it. My roommate and I decided just to do it daily, and then we would go grocery shopping, which is sort of like what Nick did, because like the food is very good, but like sometimes it's hard to completely convert when your stomach's sort of used to the other food. So it's good to have a mix, I think. So that was nice, but I would suggest, like, you know, if you're a pickier eater, maybe venturing a little bit as far as like what you're eating, and just being wary though about like where your food's coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely agree. How did we get around to and from the lab? Or no, how did we get around when we weren't going to and from the lab? Rickshaw.
Yes.
It's all rickshaw.
So rickshaws are like, you could Google that, probably be the best way to describe it. It's like a moped?
Moped taxi.
Moped taxi.
Uh-huh.
It's got like a carriage in the back, and that's where you fit like 3 to 4 people.
Yeah, and they're like fairly cheap. They're not as expensive.
They're not like
a
US taxi.
Yeah.
But they will try to trick you from
Yeah, they'll try to rip you off, so you just have to be careful and like know that they're trying to do that, and then just say like no, and then they'll be like, oh wait, come back.
Then they lower the price. You learn to sort of like haggle.
You learn how to barter and stuff like that when you're in India.
I would also ask, like, if you're going someplace in advance and you know like where it is, ask someone at the institute that you're with like how much it should cost approximately. They have meters on them, but not all of them are working properly. There's some like sort of haziness there.
Sometimes they don't follow them, they just give you a flat rate. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to this place that will say 100 rupees, you say okay. Sometimes they'll say like 300 rupees, you say no.
Or if it's like late at night, then they'll, you know, more or less. Like
Yeah, it's usually a lot more expensive at night, and then that's when you just have to like try to
make it home before it's dark, essentially. You know, if you're gonna go out for dinner, that's great, but yeah, try to be home before sundown, I guess, or at least within walking distance. How do we communicate with our fam here?
oh, just email.
I used Skype a little bit.
Oh, we're answering that question. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I use Skype. Skype and email.
Yeah, Skype. Like, there's internet. There wasn't internet at the place we were living, but there was in lab. So like, if you go in sort of like after hours, you could Skype there.
Yeah, so I Skyped to my parents every Monday morning when I got to the institute. So it was like 10 o'clock here, and that was probably like the best time that we had to like match and actually communicate.
And it's kind of, so India's like, the whole country is on one time zone, so that's sort of nifty. And they're also like an interval of a half hour off from us, so you just have to do the time conversion.
It's 10 and a half hours.
10 and a half hours from Central Standard Time to all of India. Also, my room had a phone, and we couldn't make outgoing calls, but phone calls could come in. So if, you know, like I think my mom called maybe once a week or once every other week, just to sort of catch up and see if I needed anything. There was like a postal system. I did send some postcards, but I don't think I ended up, it's kind of a tricky situation. If you're like planning to receive packages, it's really hard to get that with like the hostel where you're staying in versus the institution. So I would say try to remember everything when you come the first time, but if there's something you urgently need, really work that out with the people that you're staying with at the host institution so they know that you're receiving the package and where you're located at to get that to you. No problems with that.
How do we communicate with IUSSTF? Email.
Email.
Solely email.
Yep. But you guys will have a conference ahead of time, which will be great. And the members from IUSSTF will be there, Winstead, Bose, Karana, and I would sort of, you know, just hash out any questions that you have in advance. Also, if you email now in advance, people will be able to respond to those. I think we'll be responding to some.
Yeah.
So questions for us? Great. As far as like fun around India, like what do we do when we're not in lab kind of stuff?
We traveled a lot.
Traveled.
Me and Melanie and the other Bose scholars that were in Pune tried to do something every weekend, either taking a tour of Pune, the city. We took a day trip to Mumbai, got to see the Elephanta Caves and the Gateway of India. We went trekking a couple times, once in Lonavala, the other one, where was that?
Shehakar.
That sounds familiar, yeah. So we always tried to do it together, and we were always with either Indian students or someone that spoke Indian, Hindi.
It's sort of confusing because there's like many different, like each state has its own language, so even though the national language is Hindi, each state has its own language, but then the research institutes have people from all different states. So it's a lot of different languages being spoken.
We had someone that could speak a language that was able to like get us around,
right.
And I would definitely recommend that, especially if you're going to some place like Mumbai, because we had to take the train home, and that was like really confusing. If you've ever been to Mumbai to the train station, it's insane. And if we didn't have someone that like spoke the language and was able to help navigate us to a train back to Pune, I don't know what we would have done.
Yeah, I think as you're more than welcome to go and travel. But yeah, definitely go with another scholar, go with people at the institution. One of the best, greatest trips were trips that were like with fellow Labmates there who also like love to tour. And trekking is sort of like hiking and stuff. You can go to greeneries that are outside the city, train, you know, ride costs like a couple dollars or something. And the main cost of going to India is the flight to get there, and you're already there, and transportation around is so cheap that you should really make the most of just going and doing local sightseeing.
And then at the end of our internship, we both went to New Delhi, and we met up there. We flew for that, but I think I spent 5 days total, or maybe 2 days traveling, 3 days actually in New Delhi. But that was a lot of fun. Got to see, took a day trip to Agra, got to see the Taj Mahal. So you definitely should take advantage of that. The lab, I think you will find, is very open to having you travel, so if you need to take a week off to go to New Delhi, they are all for that. They want to show you the country and all it has to offer. And so don't be afraid to ask for some time off to go see stuff like that.
They know that you're coming in, yes, as a scholar doing research, and they expect that from you, but they also know that you're a tourist and you want to see some things as well. So as long as you work hard and do what you're supposed to in lab and are committed, they are more likely to be willing to even help you plan trips to other places and give you tips as far as where you should go and stuff. I found one website to be fairly helpful. It's called MakeMyTrip.com. All of India uses it, and it uses different things from buses to trains to flights, and everything's fairly reasonably priced. They have excursions that are either already pre-booked for you, and you can just buy one, and it'll give you a starting point and an ending point, and you can go tour all these things. Or it's very useful. So MakeMyTrip.com. Otherwise, fellow lab members.
Fellow lab members.
They're very helpful.
I never got sick while I was there, so I didn't need to go to a doctor. I didn't use my health insurance, but I don't know if that was the case for everybody.
Yeah, I just keep those meds on close hand because you never know, and you want to always make sure that what you're eating is safe, thoroughly washed, prepared. But yeah, knock on wood, no such problems there.
What was the most frustrating part of your trip with respect to science? I feel at least for my lab, the pace is a lot different than what it is here in the United States. I feel in the United States, you work 9 to lunch, and then you have your 1 hour lunch break, and then you work from 1 to when you leave. In India, they take a lot more breaks for tea and seminars, and so I found it kind of frustrating because we would only do maybe an hour and a half of work at a time, and then we would take a break, so you couldn't really make a lot of real progress in 1.5 hour increments. So that was somewhat frustrating, and I felt I could have gotten a lot more out of my project if I had just been able to work at it at my own pace.
I started the breaks. It's called chai, and you go get tea every 2 or 3 hours, or more frequently, I guess, depending where you're at. It's a little bit tricky because you're learning all new lab procedures, and you have to go by what they're used to. So some of the pipetting techniques and things that I learned here were transferable, not exactly the same protocol or procedure that were followed there. So you need to sort of adapt to learning their ways, whatever they may be. We had to leave the pipettes at the maximum amount every time. No one could tell me why that was the case, and we never did that here, but you just learn as you go.
Most frustrating part of our trip outside the lab, I would probably say trying to meet up. So I didn't have a cell phone, and my roommate did, and Melanie did, but I didn't. So just communication, and the other Bose, none of the other Bose scholars, I believe, had one. So it was just you and my roommate. So trying to coordinate like trips and like meeting up was really difficult, especially when we didn't have internet access.
Yeah, all by email.
So we would spend our days like trying to email each other, and then that's hard, emailing us like because we're all on different schedules. Some of us are in lab, and then just trying to like plan everything. That was probably the most frustrating part.
So if you're looking to get a cell phone, I'm not sure. They're fairly inexpensive if you can come by one of the like pay-as-you-go phones. It's a little tricky to convert the one if you have like a US one to one that works there, but if looking into options, otherwise internet, if you have that readily available, email works great as far as meeting up and planning things, or if you had like the same institution, that would be even better. The best parts?
Best part of my trip with respect to research was the final day when I was able to make my presentation in front of the whole board of directors for the institute. And that whole week, all the people in the institute were coming up to me saying, "I'm so excited for your presentation on Friday." And I was really nervous, but at the end, when I was able to present all that I had done this summer, and I got the round of applause from these like really prestigious, renowned people, that was probably like the most rewarding and best part of the whole research process.
I really liked there was some flexibility with the project I was working on. I was working with TB, GROL, and GROS, chaperonin proteins, and sort of the direction was going in one way, and then results sort of indicated another way, and they were flexible enough to sort of allow some mobility with the project and turn directions. So it wasn't like, no, this is preset, we have to go this way. It was sort of flexible as to like what exactly I wanted to do versus like what the results were indicating, which was helpful. And then as far as outside of that,
how is science done differently at the institutions where we were? I already touched on this a little bit. The pace is a lot different, and I would say that it's a little bit different in the way how the lab is set up. Like everyone, so who's in charge? Everyone answers.
Hierarchy.
Yeah, everyone answers to the PI. They all talk to them like daily, and I've found here in the U.S. like graduate students, they really don't talk that often to their PI until maybe like once a month at like a group meeting type of thing. Here it's like every other day at least. You say what's going on. And, I found that they look to their PI more as a boss rather than like a collaborator, like here in the U.S. And just understanding that I think will be helpful going into it.
Yeah, there's sort of like a different, society and culture and lab, and it's just all differences that. And again, that's institution specific. So what might be the case in one isn't the case in the other. Same as in the U.S. The best parts about our trips outside of our lab work, I really liked them. I thought they were fun.
Yeah, all of our travels were like a lot of fun. I got to see things that I would never have thought I would ever see in my life. I would never think to go to Lenabla and go trekking and see like people like playing in this huge waterfall.
There were people